Yeah.
Welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here, buddy.
Yeah. Well, hey, Laksh, thanks a lot. It's a pleasure to be here. So excited to dive into, everything about my journey, Zcal, and much more.
All right, let's do it. So first of all, of course, the best intro is from the person itself who's in the hot seat. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Saurabh? What is, whether you call it Zcal or Zcal, and tell us a little bit about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, that's an interesting question, right? How do we pronounce Zcal or Zcal? I think we go by Zcal internally, within our team. But I've seen people call it Zcal as well. So whatever jives well with our users, I think we love it. But here's a 60 seconds intro about myself. Of course, everybody knows now that my name is Saurabh. Really my journey started back in the days when I was deciding to do my bachelor's degree. As an Indian, we are always thinking about, which degree are we going to go after as soon as you hit your 12th standard. So really my journey starts there. I did my bachelor's in civil engineering from Pune, India. And then during that time, I didn't really have much understanding of technology. So really, I was just going with the flow of life, learning about all this stuff in civil engineering realm. And then I decided to do my master's, which is when I ended up coming to the US. I did my master's in construction management. And when I was here, Harlux, the interesting part was I started to see that technology was a big thing out here in the US. People were more adaptive to it. And I thought to myself, what's going to be the future 10 years down the line? And I felt that construction industry was lacking in terms of technology adoption. It still is. But I felt at that time it was way behind. And I had the luxury to sort of choose my courses during my master's degree. So I decided to choose some technology courses. And that's where my interest in technology sparked. And really, after doing my master's, I started my full-time job here. Currently, I'm in Washington, D.C., working here full-time for a general contracting firm. Okay. And I sort of handle all the technological side of it. So you can call me as an IT guy of construction. And then the pandemic hit during 2019 towards the end of it, which is when I came across Y Combinator, which is, I'm sure most of the people would know about it. So Y Combinator was a great journey. I did the 10-week startup school program, out of my curiosity on entrepreneurship. I loved it. And then I think they ended up launching the Y Combinator co-founder matching platform. So I registered myself there and I found my technical co-founder, because by this time you can already figure out that I'm not a technical guy. So I'm a non-technical guy, and I was really interested and passionate about the world of startup. So I said, hey, I want to try it out. And I'd already built 2 of my side projects before the co-founder matching platform was launched. And so I already had some understanding of how things work. And I said, this is the time I'll put it in use at a bigger scale. And I said, if I can find a technical co-founder who is already working on something or who is willing to collaborate, I think we can do something big out there. That's when I came across Eric. He is my co-founder. He actually built Zcal literally from the scratch himself. And he was 6 months into this whole process of building Zcal, which is when I joined. And I sort of helped him out with everything else on the non-technical side, whether it's customer support, operations, maybe sometimes hiring contractors or doing just the product management in general. And yeah, I think since then, Zcal has been growing, and here I am just talking to you about it.
Nice. It's very interesting. And there's a lot of very interesting questions I want to go into. And I like your journey, the way you mentioned it, because there's no out of the blue random event. It's a very simple, just doing what's needed to be done. A lot of people ignore that side of things. Okay, there is a startup school with Y Combinator, just like, most people don't even complete it. So, that's another thing that you just kept it simple. You went, you attended it, and then they have a partner matching sort of thing, co-founder matching thing, and you're like, okay, let's just do that. And I think just that is very interesting to me, because you just kept it so simple so far, and that's just worked. Instead of trying to sort of, get a shortcut and this and, trying too many things, you just kept it simple.
Yeah. I mean, I said, hey, we have all these resources available in this day and age. So why not sort of leverage them instead of trying to think out of the box, right? I mean, if you can think it, that's great. But, if you already have something right in front of your eyes, I felt, I want to keep trying it. And someday it will hit.
Yeah. So let's just take that approach, because you also then taken that from the simple startup school and finding a co-founder to actually coming up with Zcal is how I call it, because I'm from this part of the world, but Zcal is how you guys call it because it's from that side of the world. But so Zcal, of course, is for people who don't know, is a sort of calendar scheduling app. And so it's meeting scheduling app, if more accurate description. And the interesting thing is it's free for individual users and personal users. And that has been, of course, an interesting sort of thing. So, but before we get into the business model of it, I think first I want to know, okay, how do you even choose that space? Because that is a crowded space. We only have, players like Calendly in there. I think there was SavvyCal around that time when I think you guys started around that time. They was also building up. So, and of course, equity has been in that space for a long time before that, equity scheduling. And I think co-schedule is another one, which is, or schedule once. And some of these sort of guys have been there. I know about all of this because when we want to set up any kind of campaigns or anything, we need a scheduling software. So for appointments, and then I know it like this. There's also a few other players like Keep, which is marketing automation. And then they also have a sort of appointment side to this. So knowing all of this, like you're sitting there, you've done your Y Combinator startup school. Now you're sitting and speaking to a technical co-founder. What's happening after that? What's happening with choosing this line or choosing the space?
Yeah, absolutely. A great question, because really, that's where my mind was when I was looking for a co-founder. I wasn't specifically clinging to a specific idea, to be honest. I had a couple of my own ideas, and I was pretty open to having a technical co-founder who can help me build those ideas together, or I can find somebody who is already working on an existing project, and I feel passionate about it. So really how I came across this is, Eric had his posting, he had a short description of what he was working on. And he's like, hey, I'm building Zcal. I feel this space really needs some innovation in terms of, humanizing the interaction. And I right away connected with it, right? Because I was a power user of Calendly before myself, for a year. Right. And I felt that every time I would send the Calendly, there was a little bit of hesitation that came with it. It has nothing to do with Calendly being wrong in any sense. Right. But I just felt the whole process of sending somebody a generic link, whether it's Calendly or any other existing solution for that matter. All these solutions were doing pretty great in terms of having a product out there that works. But what we felt is as the world went remote, I felt people started to disconnect from a human interaction because everybody went into their own zone or into their own home. And they started to miss that human connection. And we felt, how can we bring that back into the process? And that's where that kind of became the core of building Zcal. So if you look at Zcal, it's sort of personalizes the scheduling page. And I think the way we tackle it is it sort of gives two answers to whoever is looking at your scheduling space, right? The first answer is, who am I meeting with? So sort of giving a context on the person that you're going to be meeting. And then the second is, why should you be excited to meet this person? Right. And I don't think so. These two questions were being answered on the other scheduling pages that I used to set. So that became the core of Zcal. And then why free is because, I have this mentality, and so does both the co-founder, is that we only want to ask our users to pay for something that we are willing to pay for. Right. And I felt that when I was using Calendly or I've tried other softwares too, I didn't find it worth it to pay for the premium features, which we consider as a basic feature. If you want to be productive, you need those features to be productive, because if a free plan limits you from creating more than one link, for example, or maybe connecting more than one calendar. What if a person wants to share multiple links with multiple people, which happens to be the case all the time? So, what I was doing is I would always go back in my calendar. I would change the name. I would edit every time I want to send it to a person, a new person, which I found it probably counterproductive than being productive in the process. So we felt, how do we sort of take those premium features, make it as, kind of identify which are the basic feature that you need on a day-to-day basis, and create a product which is focused on a consumer side of things. So we are building a consumer-friendly product. So think of it as, how WhatsApp came up in a messaging space. And, back in the days, all the service provider would charge you a couple of cents here and there to send a message. But then WhatsApp came and they said, hey, here's a free platform that you can use for messaging. And they sort of democratized the whole space. Pretty much what Instagram did to photography. And now Zcal comes, where now Zcal is doing pretty similar thing to the scheduling space. And I don't think so there is any platform who was doing that. So we felt there was a little bit of gap for us to fill in there. All the platforms started as a free plan, but they eventually go in that one vertical of enterprise custom.
Right.
So that's how we differentiate.
Yeah. So that's an interesting take. So for sure, I think the value side of things, since I've also used Zcal, I'm going to call it Zcal going forward. Now that I've also used it, for sure, I think the value proposition is fairly straightforward because what you're getting at a free plan with Zcal is what you get, let's say, in paid sort of tiers. At least the bare bones is for sure there. And I think, of course, depends on the level of product development you want to do and, how you want to take it there in terms of enterprise and sales teams and all of that. And I think we were talking about that earlier, maybe like through a messaging, and we were discussing that. So, which of course brings me to the question of like, where's Zcal going? So first of all, of course, for people who haven't used Zcal, it's Z or Z, whichever part of the world you're in, and CAL.co. And go ahead and check it out. It's a free calendar appointment scheduling app, which pretty much does whatever every other sort of tool out there can pull off, sometimes even at the sort of paid tier. And it's pretty good. We use it all the time internally. So for sure, check it out. Now, of course, back to this question on where do you go from here? So, okay, you start off with a free plan. Of course, that doesn't pay the bills, and that needs to sort of, let's say, come in at some point of time, or some sort of monetization strategy. Of course, fundraising is one option where you can keep on continuing to be free while also developing a few things on top of that. But at the same time, from a product point of view, where does it go from just a free product to something that has a much more extensive product pipeline or product development sort of roadmap?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just to eliminate the first possibility of funding out of the way, right, is because we think probably funding is not the way to go for us, at least not in the foreseeable future. Because I think when we started to work in the scheduling space, we felt that not only it is a crowded space, but at the same time, I don't think so a company can have a $1 billion revenue and can be a stock market listed company just doing scheduling. So we think fundraising probably will not be a path for us to take. So that, of course, that takes us to the second option, are we going to charge the users? Probably we will. I wouldn't lie that we wouldn't, but we feel that we are going to be eventually somewhere down the line, we'll probably come up with an enterprise level plan, which truly gives you an advanced feature, but doesn't restrict your ability to use or schedule automation on a day-to-day basis. So that would be for the user who are, let's say, the team feature, right? I mean, if there is a team in a company, they want to collaborate on their scheduling pages, then probably that's the plan, will make it available for them. But we think in terms of charging an individual person, whether it's a freelancer, anyone from academia, or even indie hackers, we think they deserve a free plan because we used to feel that way about ourselves. So we are going to keep expanding our free forever plan, and that's going to still remain a focus. But on the sidelines, we'll give them, a little bit of a premium enterprise level plan if they have a team and they want to collaborate. But
Nice.
that's sort of the future.
Yeah, and I think there was one attempt at this. I'm not sure how far they've gone, which is the open source. I think there was one somebody who open sourced
Cal.com?
cal.co or cal.com or something
Yeah.
like that, and they sort of open source the entire sort of infra
Yeah.
tech side of things, which is an interesting play in your space. So how do you look at these kinds of attempts that people are making, let's say, which is also innovative, right? It's not just
Sure.
okay, just another scheduling app, like things like these. How do you look at sort of the competition?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think cal.com is doing something great in terms of sort of democratizing the ability to play with time, because it is an important resource in our lives. So that's why I think they kept it open and they're giving you the infrastructure. The way we differentiate from cal.com is, I think, two ways. One is they have raised funding. They have raised almost $30 million, somewhere near that. So I think they eventually, for them to get any value out of it, or for the investors, I'm sure they're going to focus on enterprise level plans and sort of dive into the paid version of scheduling. And then the second way we differentiate is that I think their goal is much more bigger. They want to sort of go beyond scheduling, because scheduling is one part of our time management. There are a lot of other things one can do with time. So for example, I think they launched App Store, their own app store, where people can develop the apps and publish it. So I think that's where it becomes a little bit different than what Zcal is trying to do. With Zcal, we are trying to keep it very simple, just pretty similar to how my story is so far, right? I think we are saying everybody needs the basics or schedule automation in this remote world that we are in. So we want to be able to make that happen for anyone without the burden of money in the back of their mind. And of course, we'll have the enterprise level plan, but that will never be our focus, which is what the focus of all the other competitors.
Makes sense. And I think the interesting bit, I think I just want to turn the entire conversation to a different side of this, right? Which is, how does this work internally? So you come across these people who you meet, you've never worked with them before. Then you come up with this product and you launch it in the market. You have a bunch of users and that's growing, constantly. You have a very compelling value proposition, which is a competitor would charge $10 a month per user. You're saying, hey, it's free. Almost everybody in my company sort of uses this now. It's like almost at an individual level. It's like even for their own stuff, they're like, okay, somebody will have something or the other with Zcal. And so how do you work this internally? Like, how has that experience been working with other founders? Because that's another beast altogether, right? It's not that simple. I'm sure you guys have conversations which are not as friendly, ideas which diverge all the time. How has that experience been for you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, when I met Eric, it was just him and me for, I think, to be honest, almost 6-7 months. After which we found our third co-founder, because we felt, Zcal has been growing pretty fast and we were running out of bandwidth, so to say. And we said, we need someone to come into our team who can help us out with sort of, the new feature developments and taking Zcal to the next level. And then that's when we found our third co-founder. His name is Gurtaj, out of New York. So right now, Harlaksh, I mean, if you look at our location, you are absolutely right. Eric is in LA. I am sitting here in Washington, DC. Gurtaj is in New York. We have not met in person so far. It's been almost 7-8 months. We have not met each other, but we do sort of meet every week. We just created our huddle call. So we'll do a huddle call every week, sort of get together and talk about what Zcal is doing right now and where are we going. Now, to answer your question on, how do we navigate through, the difficult conversations, right? Because everybody has their own way of thinking about how we can grow Zcal. And that's when we fall back on, our user inputs. Really, I think your customers are driving your product. I mean, I consider them as really the product managers. My customers are my product managers. So, every week, I'm, for example, doing all the customer support. So I'll get sort of list of issues that the customers are facing. whether it's an issue or maybe list of feedbacks on what to build next. So we'll just get together on these calls and we'll talk about, hey, this is where the pain points are. Can we solve them, or how can we prioritize them? And then the second question is, if we are building of our next new feature, then we have list of feature based on how many inputs did we get from a user or how many users are asking for it. We'll sort of prioritize A, B, C. Of course, we also want to think about the level of effort that goes into it. Maybe there are some features we can build it within a week versus there is a complex feature which will take another 3 to 4 weeks. So we do try to fall back on customers and make them as the single source of truth, so to say. So that really right away eliminates a lot of those difficult conversations or arguments that will end up having. And then the second point is really Eric, he's somebody who has already done 2 startups before. He exited those business successfully. And I think he comes from a well-rounded background around startup and how things work. He has managed teams himself. So I feel, between myself and Gutaj, we are sort of newbies. I wouldn't call it newbies, but in relation to him, we of course are. So, there's a lot to learn, and we sort of make sure that we are respecting each other based on our experience in this work.
Nice. So you think the constraints that you have also help you with this? Because if you were doing this full time, then you would always want to sort of, let's say, just allocate more resources, more time, more conversations, on this. And you think just because, like, in a good way, right? It's like the constraints have allowed you to sort of just be so focused and streamlined that you there's no time for, even if there is a conversation or even if there are stuff to do, you're like, hey, we don't even have the time for it. So that's allowed you to stay simple and not break things as going against conventional wisdom, which is, or the take that people have around tech is, hey, break things fast and this. And you think that's actually helped you? The constraints have helped you?
It has a lot, right? Because you're absolutely right. We were busy doing our own things. So, when it comes to Zcal, I wouldn't say that it's a side project anymore. It is sort of becoming a full-time thing for all of us. And remote work has made that happen. There are people I know who are doing 2 full-time jobs. And earlier it used to feel not normal, but now it does feel normal. But yeah, time constraint certainly makes a difference, but I also feel that in the startup world, the pressure sort of comes from, majority of the time, it comes from two factors. One is if you are chasing a revenue number, or second is also sometimes you have taken funding and you are answerable to the investors. So we don't have any of that. We are not chasing a revenue number because we 3 of us are pretty well. I think we are in a good position financially, and we are not in a rush to make money out of Zcal and pay our bills. We have our other professional commitments, which takes care of us paying the bills, and of course we haven't raised any funding. So really, most of that pressure is already taken away right from the start.
And you think that route has helped you in terms of the taking the bootstrapping sort of a route. Of course, we're seeing a lot of that right now with a lot of people doing it. But is that something that you see as, let's just say, more founders around you, or let's say more startups that are around you also taking that route?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, we wanted to stay bootstrapped from the start because of the space we are in. Like I said, I think scheduling, we don't see ourselves becoming the Fortune 500 company. Just doing Zcal, or maybe focusing Zcal just on the scheduling side. So we just felt that bootstrapping is the way to go for this. And then the second part is we knew that we had other commitments that we were involved in. So we wanted to keep things pretty light in general. So bootstrapping seems like the approach. And I think it also opens up an avenue for us to be more creative with our approach. If we are not worried about the money factor, we can be more creative, we can take a little bit more risk ourselves, and yeah, that became the motivation to go.
Nice. Okay, so I like to know a little bit more about you. So what's your sort of, let's say, motivation, or where do you draw sort of a little bit of inspiration over the years? And, what's your, what's people and resources or things you look at when you are sort of, let's say, building something, or when you're probably at in a situation where you have to take some difficult calls, or you have to take some maybe exciting growth decisions, or in general, like maybe people you look up to, books you read, podcasts you listen to, something like that. I'm personally not a big fan of that question, but somehow it's just like people like the question. But yeah, generally just give us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when it comes to people, even with my co-founders, I'll take my co-founders as an example because it's more relatable. When I met Eric, really we had 3 to 4 meetings like this where we just talked about what is the pain point right now in the scheduling space. What doesn't he like about the space or the existing solutions, and also what does he like about them. Same thing, I said, and we did that over the period of 4 calls, and sort of just talked about what are our values as well, and when somebody is telling you what they like, what they don't like, I think right away, if it is aligning with your mindset, I think you start to connect with the person, which is what happened in our case. We had the same level of issues or the pain points that we were talking about, and that felt like right away a synergy between us. And then the second point was, how we think about approaching the whole startup world. He was working on something else, but he felt that, we can probably build this on the side, see how it goes, no pressure. If it goes well, we'll continue. If it doesn't, we'll probably abandon the project. And I was of the same mindset. So I think for me, the mindset matters the most, the values of a co-founder, right? I mean, can you be honest with each other? I don't mind constructive criticism, right? And I'll be more than happy if you can give me some critics about my work. But you want to be able to open to listening to those type of things as well, as long as it helps the company, it helps me. That was my mindset. Hey, sometimes I may be wrong, but does it help the users that we are serving? And if it does, then we'll go about doing it. So it has always come down to, I think, the technical skills, alignment in the technical skills, and then also alignment in terms of our mindset level.
Right.
Those are my focus points.
And you have any external sort of thing? So I like how you keep it very simple with everything. You're like, hey, it's just basic common sense. Just like don't overcomplicate it, which is good. I'm just gonna leave it there. I think there's this overall emphasis on, hey, what books are you reading, what podcasts are you listening to, all that, which I think everybody who likes to listen to these kind of things starts to make a lot of notes around. But in general, it's not like, if you just apply common sense in most situations, it's more than enough for the most part.
Yeah,
which is interesting. Okay, so I think I wanna quickly jump into your Twitter growth strategies. Like what's that been like? So that of course brings me to an interesting question on distribution and growth. And you have a very simple strategy that I've seen on Twitter that you've played out, and I've used it as an example with a few people who I have sort of shown. What a simple strategy on Twitter looks like in terms of distribution without overcomplicating it. So first of all, of course, I want to know a lot more about that. And there's not really a lot to know about it. It's just, what are you doing on there? And of course, the second bit is about your about things like Product Hunt and launching on there. How has your experience been? So take it away with the distribution stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're right. I think whatever you've observed so far makes sense. In one word, it's been simple in general. I personally don't like to complicate things. I feel, if you keep it simple, you can probably grow faster, right? And without putting a lot of pressure on yourself. So with Twitter, I mean, Alex, to be honest, last year when we were planning to officially launch Zcal, I was looking for a couple of social media platforms where I can grow my own personal brand, but also, how can I bring Zcal into everybody's attention? And the obvious choice came down to be Twitter, LinkedIn, and then Indie Hacker. If people know about it, I think it's a pretty good platform. I started with Indie Hacker, but I felt that I probably had to expand myself beyond that because a lot of the Indie Hackers were talking about their startup, all the strategies on Twitter. So Twitter seemed like that central point where everything sort of disseminates from. So that became my motivation of being on Twitter. And then as soon as I came on Twitter, I started to talk about Zcal in general. What are the pain points? What are the pros and cons of using it? And also, as I started to follow more co-founders or just in general, all the indie hackers, what I observed is, the concept of building in public, that was blowing up very fast. And I said, hey, if I can be, I don't know if I could do that completely because, I'm not the one who is building the features. So I've seen all these technical founders who would build the features and they can, post about what they are doing. Of course, I didn't have that with me, but I could at least start talking about, the different platforms out there in the scheduling space. How can Zcal come into that whole equation of helping a user? And then just in general, posting about my philosophy in general on startup, on growth. So I picked up a couple of topics, right? I picked up productivity, I picked up growth, I picked up indie hacking. And I said, out of these 4 or 5 topics that are related to my personal brand, that are related to what I'm doing with Zcal, how can I sort of start building some content around it while, of course, promoting Zcal? So that's really, that's what I'm doing. If I come across a good piece of content, I would try to rephrase and put it out there with my words. And it's always subjective how you take in information and how you spit it out. So with my own personal understanding of things, I said, how can I put out some content? And then I think I also use Twitter and I like Twitter in general in terms of how supportive everyone is on there. So if I reach out to someone via DM or even if I'm doing an outreach, I think I've never had an experience where somebody has shut me down right away. So it's just been very open and supportive atmosphere out there, which is what kept me sort of hinged to Twitter so far.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, your strategy has been very simple, right? I mean, just to spell it out for people to go, you can go and steal it. It's that simple. If you just go to Saurabh's profile and you see his tweets and replies, you'll actually see what he does, which is he's talking about content, but really what he does is the most effective thing is people, I think, overthink the content side of it. Your focus that I've seen on the platform is whenever there's a conversation around your competitors or scheduling, or appointments or whatever, you just go in there and just have one single line or 2 lines at max, and you're just, hey, give Zcal a shot, right? That's it. Like maybe this can solve your problem. Maybe this can solve a problem. And it's just simple. There's no pushing tactic. There's no, this big thread about, I think your Twitter followers also, I don't know, they're not many. It's like the people who follow, the number of followers you have on Twitter and the effectiveness you have on the platform in terms of getting users is just astronomical difference between that. It's like, I think you're probably at 200 followers, but then the number of users that you're able to drive just by you going and engaging with the tweets that you see talking about other people's tweets, right? And talking about scheduling and your competitors and all of that is such a simple thing, which is the actual reason why you should use the platform and not just, hey, I've got these many followers and, I've got these many, and that's a vanity metric, right? That's like, hey, I've got 10,000 followers, 100,000 followers, 200,000 these days. Now the people have like 500,000 followers. But then when they put out a tweet to promote whatever they have, they're going to get 25 people, right? 30 people, 40 people, 50 people. But then just by keeping it simple, you've not focused on the followers. You just focused on, hey, can I just offer this as an option to these people? And simply, they just, out of curiosity, they're like, okay, let's give this a shot. They'll go to your site. I'm pretty sure you've seen some of your user sessions at the back end. I'm pretty sure, you guys have probably looked at that. And that's all that happens, right? They see your tweet, which is on their, just a reply to their conversations that they're doing with their followers. They come to your site, they read whatever this is, the value proposition is, they click on it, give it a shot, and they continue as users. So it's a fairly simple process. It's like, so I found that to be very interesting and actually use that as an example for a lot of founders who speak to me about how do you grow your user base on Twitter, not your followers on Twitter.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point, right? I think what is your objective? you need to really define that, right? Are you planning to become an influencer? Then probably start worrying about the followers. Or are you planning to sort of learn from others and also, plug in your platform in between conversations, like you said, if it helps somebody? You don't want to come out as a salesy, pushy person. I hate it. If somebody does that to me, I would right away shut them down. So, I don't want to do that to others as well. But I'm like, hey, if your product is good, you shouldn't shy away from promoting it. And if as a founder of the product, if you cannot promote your product, then who else will?
Right.
It really starts at the basic level of you promoting your product in a good way. Again, you don't want to spam people. And I think the other thing I want to mention here, Harlaksh, is that both Twitter and LinkedIn, if you observe the way those platforms are built, if somebody ends up liking, even if they are not your followers, but if that person ends up liking your tweet, their followers end up seeing it. So there is a sort of that inbuilt virality loop that you can create, which is what I feel, I've been trying to leverage with Zcal. So every time I tweet, even if nobody knows me, in that conversation, if one person ends up liking, I think his or her followers, they end up seeing Zcal as an option and they would try to click. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I think from a social media standpoint, just with this simple strategy, it has helped us a lot in gaining some traction and driving users on our website.
I see that a lot, and I really love that strategy. And of course, how was your experience with Product Hunt? That's something that I was curious about, because I think you did you launch it twice or once, and then but you had a gap. Like you launched a product first organically, and then built up a bunch of users, and then launched on Product Hunt, something like that. So how's that experience?
Absolutely. So we were in sort of like a private beta before we launched on Product Hunt. So that phase lasted for 6 months. And by that time, we almost had thousands of users. I would say under 10,000 users. Let's put it that way. So we had under 10,000 users when we launched on Product Hunt. And I think we wanted to make sure we have a basic user base who we can at least reach out to when we launch on Product Hunt. That way they can come and help us out with sort of coming across more new users. And Product Hunt is a great platform in itself, right? I mean, whoever launches, if your product is good and you have some supporters out there, then there is a high chance you will end up in top 5 product of the day, which was our goal from the start. We wanted to make sure whenever we launch, there wasn't any predefined timeline that we had in mind. We were like, hey, if we hit this certain number of supporters, we'll launch it on Product Hunt and make sure that we come in a top 5 list of the day, which is what happened. When we launched, we sort of became top. I think we were 3rd product of the day, which was pretty good enough for us to gain traction. And since then, I think, Product Hunt has been a huge, I would say a driver of new users on our website. And it's been great. I think between Product Hunt and Twitter, we have gained a good amount of traction in general.
And is it still continuing with Product Hunt? You still get people coming in from the Product Hunt side of things?
Nice. Surprisingly, we do, without doing any promotion out there. Right. And we are hoping to do a 2nd Product Hunt launch sometime towards the end of this year with all the new features that we are building. Because like I said, Product Hunt is a great platform. Right. Everyone should consider launching their product out there.
Let's talk about that then. What's the I don't know whether you guys are, how much you're willing to sort of disclose what you guys are building in the back end for the year, but are there a few things that people can look forward to, or something that you want to talk about in terms of what you guys are doing for the year?
Sure. I think we are trying to build a couple of features that sort of, users started to reach out to us about, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on live chat support that we have. These are the features. For example, I can give you an idea, right? I think, for example, the max limit per day, per week feature. Many people, when you put your link out in the public, any scheduling link, you're giving sort of a control in the hands of others to be able to book the meetings. And sometimes you just feel burned out in a day or in a week with the number of meetings. So right there, that's a basic pain point that everybody was asking for. So we said, hey, we'll launch that feature. and make it available. So on a very similar line, we are sort of working on like email reminders, making sort of payment integration for Stripe or PayPal so that people can charge for their services. And then I think our eventual goal is to be able to also launch Teams feature, which is sort of relates to the enterprise customer. So we think that we can launch that, and then we are trying to also work on sort of our UI UX of the platform. We want to be able to give more customization option to our users. People these days like to play with colors. They like to have their own branding on a scheduling page. So we are trying to make that available to them. Maybe, in the near future, you might be able to change the full page color or the full page background of your scheduling page, or maybe use different color coding just for your dashboard and the meeting thumbnails that you see. So there are certain UI UX changes and the basic premium features that you pay for outside. We are trying to expand that in our fee forever plan.
Nice. And since you mentioned that you're more on the sort of product management and let's just say a little bit of marketing, a little bit of all the non-tech stuff, right? Let's look at that way. So I think something that doesn't get talked about a lot is how do you handle volume of support, right? So it's like, I'm sure that's something that is frequently on your mind. That's something that you guys think about. You for sure must be thinking about that, because it's like one thing is to just keep on building in terms of features, and the other is, and marketing is its own sort of area, but then this is something that gets left out, which is ultimately the number of support tickets that going to keep on going up. So how has that sort of experience been, where you maybe started off with a smaller number of users and now it's sort of increasing?
Yeah, I feel it goes hand in hand with the help section that we have on Zika. So our approach has always been, in the live chat support, every week we would identify what are the most common questions that our users are asking. Is it about building a new feature, or the other segment of that is just about how to use Zika or a specific feature in Zika? So we said, we would identify if the question is related to the existing product itself. We would build the guidebooks. So you will see that in the help section out there. I think we want to be able to optimize that help section. So we are literally optimizing it on a month-to-month basis, depending on the question. So what that does, Harlaksh, is every time I get a support request, if I already know it's a pain point which has been addressed in the help section, I would just literally copy paste the link, and there you go. I can close the ticket. But let's say if it's about maybe building something new, or if it's a bug, then we try to address that right away. Bug you can address right away, but if it's about new feature, we would just give them an idea of, hey, we have considered this feature. It's a part of our product roadmap, and we are trying to build it in the next 3 to 4 months. And then at that point, they have an understanding of what's going on. So I think it also depends on how you plug your customers into your product roadmap process. If you're being transparent about the timeline or about whether you're considering to build it or not, I think they won't bug you again and again through the support request. So though that strategy has helped me a lot, just being transparent or sort of optimizing the automation of our help page. And then in general, I have my co-founder, Eric, one of the co-founder. He sometimes helps me when I'm busy or when I'm traveling. He sort of plugs in to that whole customer support platform and helps us out. So we're just keeping it simple. Like I said, we'll divide it amongst ourselves. If not, we at least try to reach back out to our customers within 24 hours. Although it says live chat, sometimes you can't do it. Right. So we make sure that as long as we are within that 24-hour time frame, that the issue is still fresh in the mind of customers, and we can address that.
Got it. No, that's nice. I think that's an area that's usually not touched upon by a lot of people. So it's good to see that you have a grip on that. And I think that becomes a pretty big cost center at some point of time once it starts moving from the original sort of, let's say, co-founders to a team that does it, because now you have a more holistic view of everything, but then the support sort of team that you build may or may not really have such a wide sort of an angle to it. And that'll be interesting to see over the next, let's say, maybe a year or so, how that pans out overall. Interesting. Okay. And Saurabh, I just want to, let's say, get to your, I wouldn't say advice, but any sort of friendly recommendations to other founders out there in terms of if you had to give them one piece of recommendation or I don't like the word advice, but yeah, for the sake of conversation, let's say you had to give them one piece of advice, what would that be?
Yeah, I'll say don't build all the features at once, because I have been burned out because of that. The concept of MVP really works if you do it right. Start with one pain point that you are personally facing in your life. For me, it was scheduling using the other platforms. So I just started with there, and then we sort of expanded upon it. We didn't try to build all the features that we think would help, but we said, let's identify, for example, with Zcal, we identified personalization of scheduling platform for free, in simple words. So that's my advice. Don't go build everything and then you realize that, maybe people don't need it and let's start cutting down, or you have to abandon the project. And it has happened with me 2 times before. Of course, we didn't talk about that as much on this podcast, but the 2 platforms that I built before myself, I tried to build everything in it, everything that I could think of, which a person can do. And it sort of ended up confusing any person who would come on the website, because they had no idea of where to click, how to even create their profile, and how to sort of utilize the platform to its full capacity. So that's my one piece of advice.
Nice. And do you think those sort of the 2 ventures that you did before was sort of, let's say, you got that experience to sort of bring to let's say Zcal or Zcal, or was it something that you thought, okay, I just could have gotten it right the first time instead of failing twice and then just doing it? It's more like commonsensical. What's your sort of take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think how they say startups can fail, but entrepreneurs don't. And I love that, right? Because I had those 2 startups when I joined Y Combinator Startup School. I wanted to sort of implement myself, whatever the learnings that I had. If you are just learning theoretically without implementation, I think at some point you're going to forget about it. So I said, how can I put that in practice? So I hired a couple of contractors in India. I asked them to build me this platform. So one was for influencers on YouTube. It was simple Chrome plugin that will pop up, and you can set up your giveaway or sweepstakes in there. And while people are watching your video, you can sort of gamify the whole process. So instead of them clicking away from your content page, they can still be on your content page and they can enter into a giveaway that you are running. And then the second platform was about hiring, recruitment and hiring. So to answer your question, Harlaksh, I wanted to do it both ways. I wanted to, of course, get some experience of building something of my own. But also I wanted to see, if it is something that helps others. And if it does, then probably I was going to expand upon that project and maybe get somebody onboarded as a technical co-founder. Of course, in this case, it didn't work, but I had a lot of learning to take away with me. And one of those learning was don't build everything at once and keep it lean. It's a concept of lean startup. And yeah, so yeah, absolutely. Whatever you are doing as a part of your side project, don't think that if it's a failure, you are a failure. It doesn't equate that way. Project can be a failure, but there's always some learning you can take away and sort of implement it in your next startup, as long as you're willing to keep on going.
Got it. Saurabh, that was, I don't have to ask you many more questions. I think the English is irrelevant here. I think your overall journey just speaks volumes about just keeping it simple in a world of people throwing AI and this and that and sort of all these different kind of sort of distribution models and this and that. Just keep it simple and you should be on your way. I think focus and working with the constraints that you already have is a better way to sort of work rather than constantly keep on looking for, let's say, more and more resources, whether it's finding a co-founder, whether your growth on Twitter, whether you deciding what to build, how to build it. I think the one common theme that's coming across is for sure just keeping it simple and honest.
Yeah.
I think that's this other word that I thought of, which is just keeping it honest and simple, and not really trying to prove to other people that you're building a startup, but just building one which helps your users, right? So I think that's been my sort of takeaway. But thank you so much, Saurabh, for joining in, and really enjoyed learning from you the simple side of things with all this. I'm going to take and sort of start applying that right away into my things and sort of keep, like, I think I'm going to push away 20 other things that I have in my list. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and it's great having you.
Yeah, absolutely, Harlux. It was great to be here, and never complicate anything. Keep it simple. Thanks a lot.